Amid the opulent ambience of a luxury hotel, the sharp and dismissive voice of the hotel manager rang out, "If you're unwilling to leave peacefully, I'll have to call security." Shockingly, the target of this remark was a black female billionaire who had booked and confirmed a room at the hotel, only to be denied at check-in and forced to leave. Weeks later, she returned to the same hotel in a very different capacity, and the manager realized he had made a grave mistake. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy. The Zenith Tower Hotel stood as a monument to wealth and exclusivity, its glass façade gleaming under the late afternoon sun. Inside, the lobby buzzed with quiet luxury, the soft shuffle of designer luggage, the muted hum of conversations in various languages, and the delicate tinkling of piano notes from the grand instrument in the corner. Everything about the space spoke of refinement and privilege, a sanctuary for the world's elite. Sofia Blake, a self-made black female billionaire, stepped through the revolving doors, her heels clicking purposefully against the polished marble floor. She radiated confidence in her impeccably tailored suit, her dark curls framing a face both elegant and commanding. As the CEO of one of the fastest-growing sustainable energy companies in the world, Sofia had grown accustomed to commanding respect in boardrooms, conferences, and Forbes covers. Yet, as she walked into the Zenith, she couldn't ignore the subtle shift in the air. Her assistant, Elena Garcia, hurried in behind her, a tablet in one hand and a suitcase in the other. "Reservation is confirmed, presidential suite," Elena said, her voice reassuring. "We're all set." Sofia nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Let's hope they're as prepared as we are." The receptionist at the front desk, a young woman with a polished uniform and name tag that read Madison, looked up as they approached. Her polite smile faltered ever so slightly as her eyes met Sofia's. It was the kind of hesitation Sofia had seen many times before, a flicker of discomfort that reminded her she was still an outsider in spaces like this. "Good afternoon," Madison said, her tone crisp but lacking warmth. "How can I help you?" "Sofia Blake," Sofia said, sliding her ID across the counter. "I have a reservation for the presidential suite." Madison's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before she began typing. The tension in her shoulders became more apparent as she frowned at the screen. "One moment, please," she murmured, glancing up at Sofia with something unreadable in her gaze. Seconds stretched into an uncomfortable silence. Elena's brows knitted together as she stepped closer. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Madison hesitated before replying, "I'm not seeing a reservation under that name." Elena's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. I confirmed it myself. Reservation ID 5842. Presidential suite, 4 nights, under Sofia Blake." Madison's polite veneer slipped as she continued typing, her frown deepening. "I'm sorry, but I don't see anything here. Are you sure you booked with us?" Sofia folded her arms, her expression calm but steely. "I don't make mistakes like that, Ms. Madison. You might want to check again." Madison flushed slightly but maintained her stance. "Let me call the manager," she said, reaching for the phone. Minutes later, the hotel manager, Robert Hayes, approached, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier's light. He greeted Sofia with a smile that was polished but impersonal. "Good afternoon, Ms. Blake. I understand there's been some confusion with your reservation." "There's no confusion," Elena interjected firmly, holding up her tablet. "Here's the confirmation email from your booking system. The room was paid for weeks ago." Robert glanced at the screen, his smile never wavering. "I see. Unfortunately, it seems there was a clerical error on our end. Our presidential suites are currently occupied, and we don't have any comparable accommodations available." Elena's voice rose slightly. "A clerical error? You're telling me the Zenith Tower double-booked a presidential suite for one of the keynote speakers of the Sustainability Conference? That's not just an error. That's incompetence." A murmur rippled through the lobby as nearby guests and staff began to take notice. Sofia stood tall, her sharp eyes scanning the room, aware of the subtle glances and whispered exchanges. She felt the familiar sting of being both invisible and hypervisible at the same time. "I assure you," Robert said smoothly, "we take our guests' experiences very seriously. We'd be happy to find you a more modest room for tonight." "Modest?" Sofia's voice was low but carried the weight of her displeasure. "I didn't come here for modest. I came here for what I reserved and paid for. Robert's smile hardened at the edges. I understand your frustration, Ms. Blake. However, there's nothing more we can do at this time. Sofia's hands clenched at her sides. She had encountered many versions of Robert Hayes throughout her career, gatekeepers cloaked in politeness but wielding prejudice as their weapon. Let me make this clear, she said, her voice steady. I've spent my life breaking into spaces like this, and I'm not leaving without the respect I deserve. The manager stiffened, and the tension between them thickened. Finally, he gestured toward the security desk. If you're unwilling to leave peacefully, I'll have no choice but to call security. Elena's eyes widened. Security? You're going to call security on a paying guest? Do you even understand who she is? Robert didn't flinch. We reserve the right to ensure a peaceful environment for all our guests. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Sofia stared at Robert, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She thought of the people watching from the corners of the lobby, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. She thought of the countless times she had been made to feel small, unworthy, out of place. But she wasn't a child anymore, and she wasn't going to beg. Let's go, Sofia said quietly, her voice laced with steel. Elena started to protest, but Sofia raised a hand to stop her. We're leaving, Sofia repeated, her head held high. She turned on her heel, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she walked toward the exit. Elena hurried after her, her face flushed with anger. As they stepped out into the cool Manhattan air, Elena turned to Sofia, her voice trembling. This is unacceptable. We should go straight to the press. They can't get away with this. Sofia's lips curved into a cold smile. Oh, they won't get away with it. But we won't fight them here. Not like this. What now? Elena asked, her frustration simmering. Sofia raised her chin, her eyes gleaming with quiet determination. Now, she said, we find another hotel. And then I make sure the Zenith Tower pays for what they just did. As they hailed a cab, Sofia's mind raced. This wasn't just an insult. It was a challenge. And if there was one thing Sofia Blake excelled at, it was turning challenges into victories. The cab ride away from the Zenith Tower Hotel was silent, save for the hum of the city outside. Sofia Blake stared out the window, her face a mask of calm, but Elena could see the storm brewing beneath her composed exterior. Sofia's silence wasn't defeat, it was calculation. They humiliated you in there, Elena finally said, breaking the silence. You should have let me record that whole mess. They'd be scrambling to do damage control by now. Sofia turned her head slightly, her sharp gaze meeting Elena's. What would that achieve? She asked, her voice measured. A public apology. A free weekend in the suite they refused me. No, Elena, that's too small. Elena sighed, her shoulders slumping. So what's the play? Sofia's lips curved into a faint smile, the kind that promised she already had a plan. They wanted me out of that hotel because they thought I didn't belong. I'm going to make sure I'm the only name they care about. I will buy this hotel. The cab pulled up to a smaller boutique hotel a few blocks away. It wasn't the towering opulence of the Zenith, but it was charming and intimate, a space that welcomed rather than excluded. As they checked in, the staff greeted Sofia with warmth and professionalism, a sharp contrast to the hostility they'd just faced. Once they were settled in their suite, Sofia removed her jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and pulled out her laptop. Elena, I need you to get me everything you can on the Zenith Tower. Ownership, financials, market standing. If there's a crack in their foundation, I'm going to find it. Elena perked up, her frustration melting into determination. On it, she said, already tapping away on her phone. As Elena worked, Sofia leaned back in her chair, gazing at the city lights through the window. The Zenith Tower had positioned itself as the epitome of luxury, catering to the elite and the powerful. But Sofia knew that beneath its polished surface, no business was immune to flaws. All it took was someone willing to look closely enough. Acquiring the Zenith Tower Hotel was far from a simple transaction. It was a high-stakes battle in the cutthroat world of luxury real estate, where every deal was shrouded in secrecy and power plays. For Sofia Blake, it was a fight worth taking on, even if it meant putting her reputation, resources, and resilience to the ultimate test. After leaving the Zenith in humiliation, Sofia's mind was already formulating a plan. That night, she sat in her penthouse office, the city skyline sprawling before her, as Elena pored over documents on her laptop. The Zenith isn't just some boutique hotel, Elena began, scrolling through reports. It's owned by an investment conglomerate, Pinnacle Ventures. They don't sell easily. Sofia leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. They will if they have no choice. Elena arched an eyebrow. You've done this before, Sofia. But Pinnacle Ventures is different. They're big, bureaucratic, and incredibly protective of their assets. Exactly, Sofia said, her voice steady. That's their weakness. Bureaucracy slows them down. While they cling to their traditions, I'll use my speed and precision to find the cracks in their armor. Over the following weeks, Sofia immersed herself in the labyrinthine structure of Pinnacle Ventures. Through her network of contacts, she learned that the conglomerate was struggling to maintain profitability in a rapidly evolving hospitality market. The Zenith, while prestigious, was bleeding money due to outdated management practices and a tarnished reputation among the more diverse clientele. It was a perfect target, but one Pinnacle wasn't eager to let go of. Sofia's first move was subtle. She enlisted a trusted financial analyst to quietly purchase small shares in Pinnacle's portfolio. These investments gave her access to confidential reports and insight into the group's vulnerabilities. It's not enough to own shares, Sofia explained to Elena during a late-night strategy session. I need to make them want to sell. Her plan became clear. Expose the Zenith's underperformance while presenting herself as the ideal buyer, one with a vision to save it. The process was anything but smooth. Pinnacle Ventures' board was notorious for its resistance to external influence, and Sofia's first proposal was met with silence. Undeterred, she doubled down, attending high-profile industry events to build alliances with key stakeholders within Pinnacle. These events were not just networking opportunities, they were battlegrounds. At one such gala, Sofia found herself face-to-face with Robert Langston, a senior partner at Pinnacle and one of the key decision-makers for the Zenith. Langston, a man in his late 60s with a sharp tongue and an even sharper eye for profit, greeted her with a thin smile. I've heard about your interest in the Zenith, Langston said, his tone laced with skepticism. But let's be honest, it's not for sale. Not yet, Sofia replied, her smile equally sharp. But even Pinnacle Ventures knows when to cut its losses. I'm offering a solution to a problem you're reluctant to admit you have. Langston chuckled, sipping his whiskey. It's bold, I'll give you that. But bold doesn't always win. Sofia leaned in slightly, her voice dropping just enough to convey both confidence and warning. Neither does clinging to a sinking ship, Mr. Langston. The Zenith is underperforming, and you know it. You can let it drag down your portfolio, or you can let me turn it into the success story Pinnacle needs right now. Langston said nothing, but his silence was telling. Back in her office, the pressure mounted. Pinnacle Ventures was dragging its feet, reluctant to cede control of one of its flagship properties. Weeks turned into months as Sofia negotiated with intermediaries, navigating a web of legal and financial hurdles. Each meeting tested her patience, but she remained unwavering. When Pinnacle finally countered with an inflated asking price, Sofia refused to back down. She assembled a team of financial experts to dissect every aspect of the Zenith's operations, exposing inefficiencies and highlighting the long-term risks of retaining the hotel. With this ammunition, she returned to the negotiating table. This is what the Zenith is really worth, Sofia declared during a virtual conference with Pinnacle's board, presenting a detailed analysis. And this is my final offer. You can accept it and walk away with a profit, or you can hold on to a liability that will cost you millions more in the coming years. There was silence on the other end of the call, followed by murmurs of dissent among the board members. Finally, Langston spoke. You've made your point, Miss Blake, he said grudgingly. We'll consider your offer. The breakthrough came late one evening. Sofia was in her office, reviewing a proposal for another project, when her phone buzzed. It was Elena, her excitement palpable even through the screen. They've accepted, Elena said breathlessly. The Zenith is yours. For a moment, Sofia simply sat there, the weight of the victory settling over her. She had fought tooth and nail for this moment, enduring countless rejections, backdoor negotiations, and thinly veiled condescension. And now she had won. Good, Sofia said finally, her voice calm but resolute. Now the real work begins. As she looked out at the city lights, Sofia allowed herself a rare moment of pride. The Zenith Tower Hotel had tried to exclude her, but now it belonged to her. And she was determined to make it a place where no one would ever feel unwelcome again. The morning after the acquisition was finalized, Sofia Blake stood at the base of the Zenith Tower Hotel. The once daunting glass facade that had represented exclusion now gleamed with new potential under the soft morning light. Today, the Zenith was no longer a fortress of privilege, it was a canvas for Sofia's vision of inclusivity and excellence. Elena Garcia stood beside her, clutching a portfolio filled with plans, employee rosters, and the newly signed deed. "Are you ready for this?" Elena asked, her voice a blend of excitement and anticipation. Sofia adjusted the cuff of her tailored blazer, her lips curving into a determined smile. "I've never been more ready." Inside the Zenith lobby, the atmosphere was as opulent as Sofia remembered, marble floors that gleamed under the chandeliers, and soft whispers of conversations among staff and guests. Yet this time, there was a different kind of energy. The employees, some of whom had witnessed her humiliating encounter weeks earlier, now looked on with a mix of curiosity and apprehension as Sofia and Elena entered. Behind the front desk stood Madison, the same receptionist who had refused to honor Sofia's reservation. Her face blanched as recognition dawned. Sofia met her gaze briefly, then shifted her attention to the approaching figure of Robert Hayes, the hotel's manager. The confidence that had exuded from him during their last encounter was gone, replaced by uncertainty and tension. "Ms. Blake," Hayes began, his voice faltering slightly. "I wasn't expecting what brings you back to the Zenith." Sofia stepped forward, handing him a copy of the acquisition papers. Her tone was even but laced with quiet authority. "I'm not here as a guest, Mr. Hayes. I'm here as the new owner." The color drained from Hayes' face as he glanced at the document in his hands. His jaw slackened as he scanned the signatures, his polished demeanor cracking. I wasn't informed of this," he stammered. "There hasn't been any communication." "The ownership transfer was finalized yesterday," Sofia interrupted smoothly. "Lakshara Holdings sold the Zenith to my company. As of this morning, I'm in charge." Madison stood frozen behind the desk, her expression a mixture of shock and discomfort. Murmurs rippled through the lobby as employees and guests began to take notice of the exchange. Hayes struggled to regain his composure. "Ms. Blake," he said, forcing a strained smile. We weren't given any warning about this transition." "I'm giving it to you now," Sofia said, her voice calm but firm. "Prepare for a staff meeting in an hour. I'll be addressing the entire team." Before Hayes could muster a response, Sofia turned and walked toward the elevators, Elena following closely behind. The sharp clicks of their heels echoed through the lobby, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. An hour later, the staff gathered in the main conference room. The tension was palpable as employees filled the room, their faces reflecting a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Madison sat near the back, her gaze darting nervously around the room, while Hayes took a seat near the front, his posture stiff and defensive. Sofia entered with Elena at her side, her presence commanding immediate attention. She walked to the head of the table, setting her notes down with precision before addressing the room. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and authoritative. "As some of you may have heard, the Zenith Tower Hotel is now under new ownership. My name is Sofia Blake, and I am honored to lead this establishment into its next chapter." Her eyes swept over the room, meeting the gaze of every employee. The Zenith has long been a symbol of luxury, but it has also been a symbol of something far less admirable: exclusion. That ends today. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. From this moment forward, the Zenith Tower Hotel will represent inclusivity, excellence, and respect for everyone who walks through its doors, whether they are guests or staff. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Hayes shifted in his seat, his discomfort evident, but Sofia continued undeterred. "We will be implementing new policies effective immediately," she said. "All staff will undergo inclusivity and diversity training. Hiring practices will be revised to reflect the diverse world we live in. Guest policies will be reviewed to eliminate the unspoken biases that have dictated who feels welcome here." Sofia's gaze landed squarely on Hayes, her tone sharpening. This hotel's reputation for exclusivity has come at the cost of its integrity. If anyone here has an issue with the direction we're taking, you are free to step down." The murmurs grew louder, some employees nodding in agreement while others exchanged uneasy glances. Hayes, his face reddening, finally found his voice. "With all due respect, Ms. Blake," he began, his tone defensive, "the Zenith has always prided itself on maintaining a certain standard of clientele. Our guests expect." "Exclusivity is not a justification for discrimination, Mr. Hayes," Sofia interrupted, her voice cutting through his protest. "If you cannot uphold the values this hotel will now stand for, I suggest you evaluate your position." Hayes opened his mouth as if to respond but thought better of it. Sofia turned her attention back to the room. "This transition may not be easy, but it is necessary. I expect your full cooperation. If you cannot adapt to these changes, you are welcome to leave." The meeting concluded with a mixture of tension and anticipation. As the staff filed out, Elena leaned closer to Sofia, her voice low but filled with admiration. "You just shook their world." Sofia exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Good. It's time they realized this is no longer the Zenith they knew." In the weeks that followed, Sofia worked tirelessly to implement her vision for the Zenith. Inclusivity training sessions were scheduled, outdated hiring practices were overhauled, and marketing materials were redesigned to reflect the hotel's new ethos. Hayes resigned within days, taking a handful of disgruntled employees with him. Sofia replaced him with a sharp, empathetic general manager who shared her vision for progress. Under Sofia's leadership, the Zenith transformed. Guests who had once avoided the hotel due to its reputation began to flock to it, drawn by the promise of luxury without prejudice. The lobby, once a space of silent judgment, became a place of warmth and welcome. One afternoon, Sofia paused in the lobby, watching as families, couples, and business travelers mingled freely. The sound of laughter and conversation filled the air, a stark contrast to the tension she had once felt in this very space. Elena appeared at her side, a proud smile lighting up her face. "You've done it," she said softly. "You've turned this place around." Sofia smiled, her gaze steady. "Not yet," she replied, "but we're getting there." The Zenith Tower Hotel was no longer just a business. Under Sofia's leadership, it had become a symbol of change, a place where everyone, regardless of their background, could feel they belong. And now, join the movement for justice. Subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and make these stories a part of your daily life. Together, we can create change.